Oh, over the last 10 years or so, we've seen an influx of inexpensive Chinese manufactured thermostatic mixer valves. And like many Chinese products, maintenance information can be difficult to find, or if you do have a user guide, it can be a bit light on detail and difficult to follow. Now, I have a couple of these in the house, and to their credit, they hold a rock steady temperature and they don't look too bad. However, this one has developed a leak. Now, inside these valves there should be ceramic discs which have an improved lifespan over the metal valves, as well as silicone washers as opposed to the rubber-based compounds. The flush finish looks pretty good, but unless you've got the detailed instructions, it can look quite challenging on how to get inside this and figure out what's causing the leak. For example, the exploded view of the valves gives no clue how to dismantle, and you could be forgiven for thinking that the controls just pull off. In fact, the instructions say just pull off the handles, and I can tell you now that won't work. The unit has two flow controls, and each has a button to press. That's the thermostatic control, also with a button, and the way to get this whole thing off is to unscrew these buttons, and that will reveal access to a retaining screw, in this case a 2.5mm hex screw. So loosen each of the buttons and then undo the retaining screw, just loosen it, and it should just pull straight off. On this one, the thermostatic control is slightly different. This button is locked to the temperature setting, so turn it around and underneath is a hole where the other retaining screw for this one is located. On this model there's a chrome faceplate. Now this won't pull off. We've got these retaining rings here. These can be a bit tight. You may want to get a pair of mole grips or spring pliers on them, but usually they're just hand tight. Then just prise off the faceplate. If it's been sealed, as this one has, just prise it off gently, making sure you don't try and bend it. Now we have access to the valves as well as the thermostat. These are actually called water flow cartridges. I think the naming is nothing more than a marketing exercise in the hope that you'll replace the whole valve assembly if you get a fault. Fortunately, you can still find the individual consumable parts online, such as the ceramic discs and the washers, or gaskets as they like to call them these days. A full kit is about $10. The gaskets alone are $5, and just the ceramics about $6. Now if you went for the full replacement cartridge, it could rush you as much as $50, as this Hudson Reed one would. So it's worth replacing just the parts you need to replace. Anyway, each valve or cartridge has a shroud on it. This is the stop for the faceplate. We take that off. The one I need to fix is the top one, because that's connected to the shower. Now, these are often just hand tight, but if, like this one, it's more than hand tight, you're going to have to get a spanner to take it off. And unfortunately, this one's a little bit more difficult in that it's got a couple of pins in here, and that requires a pinhead wrench. Now, fortunately, well, unfortunately, I don't have a plumber's pinhead wrench, but I did have an old spring clip wrench for power lines, for fuel lines, and it was broken, but I managed to piece it together with a bolt, and it has these two pins in here which are about the right size for this. So then in this one, a pinhead, maybe yours is just hand tight, in which case just screw it off with a cloth wrapped around the threads, but this should take the, there we go. That's the shroud covering the water valve or the water cartridge. Let me just move the camera slightly so you can see in there. There's the recessed nut you need access to. Now I have a pretty comprehensive socket set here, but nothing is long enough to get in there except for a bunch of spark plug wrenches, and that seems to do the trick here. So this is a 17mm spark plug wrench, and reaches in and sits proud of the wall for me, so I can get a socket on it. And this is the part which has probably got the source of your problems if you have a leak. And as you can see on the end of that, the washer or gasket is completely shredded. So that's the cause of my problem. Well, this took a few days to arrive, but this should be a complete ceramics and washer set, yes, and they obviously have a hot and a cold here, but with mixer valves there is no real hot and cold there. So this will be the replacement part for the end of that valve. So I'll remove the old shredded washer and replace it with this. Well, there's the old one off, and I've just seated this one in. It's a fairly tight fit. Obviously I'd want it that way rather than the other way, but importantly, as well as fitting in the recess, it's a stepped washer. It's sitting nicely proud off the valve and should close the seal. And the reassembly is pretty much the reverse of the assembly, of the disassembly. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just pressing on with this, but you probably want to reseal behind the faceplate with some transparent sealant. Right, that's reassembly complete. I'll now nip off and switch on the water. Stay tuned. I better get the camera out of the shower, just in case. Excellent, job done. Well, now your problem may not be the washer or the washer alone or the gasket. It may be the ceramics. These require a little bit extra work. As you can see on the screen, in order to get the ceramics out, you're going to have to remove that little spring clip on the spigot. Remove it carefully, because if it breaks, you've effectively disabled your water cartridge. Remove that spring clip and then push the spigot down through the assembly, so in the direction of the blue gasket, to reveal the ceramics. And you can remove those ceramics and take a closer look at them. If they're cracked or chipped, I'm afraid you're going to have to replace them. But if it's just maybe some hard water that's causing a build-up on the faces of the ceramics, and there is a very smooth side, and be careful you put them in the right way round if you're refitting them. There's a very smooth side to the ceramics which should be facing each other. Then you can drop them into a bit of distilled white vinegar, and that will remove any of the hard water deposits that are on there. Refit those again with the smooth sides facing each other, and reassembly is the reverse of disassembly. If you found this useful, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Cheers!